This is not the first time the Republican Party has been so sharply divided between big government progressives and limited government conservatives. Listen to this memorable bit of history.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
No, that wasn't Ron Paul. That was Barry Goldwater in 1964 at the Republican National Convention at the old Cow Palace in San Francisco. Some historians would say that the current fight for the soul of the Republican Party is like 1964 all over again. Here with us now is an expert on this topic, Daniel McCarthy, the editor of the American Conservative magazine. Dan, always a pleasure. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks very much, Judge.
What happened in 1964 in San Francisco and in the months leading up to it that profoundly affected the Republican Party a generation later?
Well, it was really a shot heard around the world, and certainly here in America, it transformed politics. The Republican Party, for a generation, had been in the hands of big government progressives, people who were called Rockefeller Republicans. And Goldwater changed that. He actually brought in new people and galvanized the party, turned it conservative, at least for a while.
If Ron Paul does not succeed in getting the nomination this time around, whereas Barry Goldwater did succeed in 1964, what similarities do you see between 2012 and 1964? What continuing battle are we observing?
There's a pretty profound similarity because in both cases you have a very philosophically consistent candidate, which you don't have in most other political races. And this has created a whole movement. Just as Goldwater brought in conservatives to the Republican Party almost for the first time, Ron Paul has created a new generation of constitutionalists. And that's going to have long-term repercussions regardless of what happens at the Republican convention this year.
Whatever you think of the presidency of Ronald Reagan, I think a lot of people can make the historical argument that without Goldwater in 64, there might not have been a successful Ronald Reagan in 1980. Can you sort of dream whimsically and think what might happen 8 or 16 or 20 years from now as a result of what Ron Paul is doing today by bringing these young people and their message and love of liberty into the Republican Party?
Well, it's a generational shift, and it really is something that doesn't end this year or even 4 years from now. It's something that's going to continue to be remaking the Republican Party, and for that matter, hopefully the country, over the next generation. What it's doing is creating not just the next Ronald Reagan, but I think the next several Ronald Reagans.
Is the Republican Party doomed to have this battle every 20 or 40 years between big government progressives, the Rockefeller Republicans, and small government libertarians, the Ron Paul Republicans?
Well, the tendency is for the Republican Party to get assimilated to big government in general. And so since the New Deal, basically you've had New Dealers in both of the parties. And it's a constant battle, a constant renewal that's needed for conservatives and constitutionalist libertarians to come back and try to reclaim the country. But I think eventually this change is going to take place, and it's going to be very difficult for the statists and the big government New Dealers to stage a comeback, simply because the government can no longer afford the programs that it's been trying to deliver.
Got it. Dan McCarthy, a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Is Wall Street finally